What's up, and welcome to the DualSense podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Jason, and I'm not joined this time by your other co-host, Travis. He is at work, being a busy boy, but instead I'm joined by a very special guest. He is our brother from down under, our brother in PlayStation as well. He's known as Mr. Ryan Betson from the PopCulturists for the Players podcast out of Australia. Ryan, thank you for being on the show. You're the only guest that I ever have on the show, which I love. It's like part of the lore of the show. So thank you for doing the show. Thank you for being here. And how are you?
I'm very well, man. Very, very well. And I'm more than happy to come and do this show. I look, I'm shameless. I'll talk anywhere, but there is something special about coming and doing this show with yourself, man. Like it's good. Yeah, you and I align in a lot of our PlayStation thoughts, and it's a good little ecosystem to be a part of. Like, with there being not an abundance of PlayStation podcasts, but a number of key players, your big boys. It's fun to sort of hang around in the in the little guys, you know what I mean? Like, which is us, which is you, it's me, it's a couple other mates that I have in the space, but at least we will come together and do cool stuff. So good.
Yeah, absolutely. I would, if you were going to use a gaming metaphor, I would consider like, our show is like, an A, like an indie game. And, then you have you guys. You're more of like a double A game, I would say. Like you have a good following. You got a lot of YouTube subscribers and whatnot. You've been doing it a long time, and then you got your triple A, which are of course like your Last Stands, etc.
Actually, that's really apt description. That works. Yeah.
I would say so, but.
It's also like a much easier market here in Australia as well, because there's only like 3 of us that do PlayStation specific content. So it's really easy for us to like stand out. And I can also make that claim that, we're the top 3 PlayStation podcasts made in the country, because it's not wrong. It doesn't mean we're number 1. It just means we're in the top 3.
That's awesome. I love that though. There's like you guys, and I know there's someone that you have on your show a lot. Is his name James? Am I making that up?
So it's Paul James. So he was running another PlayStation podcast, but that one has gone away. And then there's another mates of mine who run one called Platinum Explosion. And then there's another one that was around for a while, but they've gone quiet too. So I know there's at least 2 of us that are active.
Gotcha.
We're all friends, which is fun.
That's awesome. That's what it should be. Well, we were talking before we started recording about how, in your timeline and your simulation that, you guys are in summer and it's getting hot there in Australia. We're about to get ready for an Arctic blast. I was telling you here in the States. And so, you're in the future, obviously. And of course, in your timeline, you're in another season as well. So that's one of the things that is interesting about every time you and I try to get together is we have to do a little bit of calculus to figure out, okay, what fucking day is this and what fucking time of day are we going to do this? Because I always feel like me and you're like, okay, this time. And you're like, all right, that's this time, or this day, right? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, hang on, wait, that's this time, my day. And it's fucking crazy. So that's just part of the problem when you live in the future and I live here in the past. But it's always fun to try to figure that out with you as well. But
and then there's always that weird daylight savings, because it turns out the US don't have daylight savings when we do. So like there's a moment in time where we can either be, like 14 hours different or 16 hours different. And it's ridiculous. It's tough to manage, but like today it's like 11 in the morning here, and I think it's 7 p.m. for you. So it's not too bad.
Yeah. So we're getting together before the holidays here, and you had reached out to me before God of War Ragnarok came out, and you're like, hey, I'm playing Ragnarok, would you want me to come on the show and we can talk about Ragnarok and you can kind of get that like pre-release bump or whatever, and which I very much appreciated. And I was like, well, I actually have grand designs to have you on in December for this episode here that we're doing. So it worked out, and because the reason why is because there are several things that I want to talk with you about today, as we always do. And it's been a weird year in a way because PlayStation has been quiet at times, but they've also recently kind of snuck in to the Game Awards and what I would consider as a very robust presence at the Game Awards, which actually surprised me quite a bit. So it was kind of in a way where, they had some straight up announcements of games like Death Stranding 2. But then they also had other things that were more of like publishing partnerships or like what are obviously timed exclusives for console, et cetera, and things like that. So I wanted to first talk to you about the Game Awards and just, I guess, start off generally with what you thought about the show. Would you think it was a good show? How did you think PlayStation came out in the show? And then we obviously know that some of their competitors like Xbox weren't there. But what did you generally think about the Game Awards this year? And I guess specifically in relation to our beloved PlayStation.
Uh, for me, it was most certainly one of the better shows they've had in a while. Like, it didn't
Hmm.
feel as littered, with all the bullshit ads, etc. And there was a good feel to having it being in the theater, in the space, and having that people again. Like, if from memory, last year had it a little bit too, but like it really had that feel of where post the major lockdown sort of pandemic time. Like, it's still there and it's still around, but things are
Hmm.
slightly getting better, which is cool. Additionally, with everything being quiet, like there was this benefit here of having room to talk about stuff. So
Hmm.
in the light of this whole Activision thing, which I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit later as well,
Hmm.
I think PlayStation are being very quiet and not doing like that showcase that they really should have done at the back end of this year, announcing what is coming in the next year. So what we saw were a couple announcements here that I think would have fit that.
Mm.
So they just held off on them in the same way that Silent Hill exclusive, like Silent Hill did a showcase really
Hmm.
unnecessarily because I believe it should have been tied in to another presentation in the same way
Sure.
that like Final Fantasy 16 announced their date and stuff. Like all these things that are PlayStation second party exclusives weren't announced through PlayStation, which is really odd.
I agree.
But when you're
I
trying
agree.
to not push the idea of exclusivity, even though it's there, then this is the best way to do it. So having
Hmm.
and seeing as PlayStation were there in a large sense in that they had two Game of the Year award nominees with both Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok. It makes sense for them to be there in a huge presence. We also got to see
Yeah.
the announcement of Burning Skies, the Forbidden West DLC, which is cool. Death Stranding 2 is huge, and a bunch of other little things that are coming to the console. For the awards themselves, though, like outside of the announcements, uh, I can understand why many people would put Elden Ring at their number one. It's not personally my choice. So my choice is God of
Right.
War Ragnarok, regardless of my biases. I
Hmm.
do believe it is a much like a better combination of things. I understand that Elden Ring pushed a lot of boundaries and it altered the path of the Soulsborne moving forward, where Ragnarok is essentially more of the same. But
Right.
I see the Norse saga as one of the greatest things to ever be placed on a console or games,
Wow.
period. Like that
Wow.
collected story for me
Hmm.
is brilliant because it isn't one game and a sequel. Very similar to Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. This is a shared narrative between these two games that culminate in this genuine masterpiece of game.
That is true.
And I think that's probably why that say Elden Ring deserves it in a number of ways more for
Hmm.
what it did, what it achieved, and what it delivered. It most certainly wasn't my kind of game, but
Yeah.
I can see its value and I understand its value and I respect what it did.
Yeah, Elden Ring's definitely not my type of game either. I didn't play it, but that's because I just know that it's not for me. I definitely respect the hell out of it. Like, there's no doubt that it was a huge game. It dominated the industry and really it kind of dominated pop culture there for like several months,
Mm,
and which is pretty astounding for a video game. It doesn't happen all the time that way, and especially considering what type of game it is. It's not Call of Duty. It's Elden Ring. It's a hard it's a hard video game that's difficult for just someone to pick up and play out, in
mm.
my opinion. And then you were hearing things like 20 or 30% of people who played it got the finished the game or whatever, got the platinum, or then the platinum rate was insane on it. So it definitely struck a nerve with people. But in terms of God of War, I will say I'm still playing it. I have not beat it yet. I'm like 25 hours. I've spent 25 hours with it. And this won't spoil anything, but this will give you an idea of where I'm at. I am in Helheim.
Mhm,
So I feel like
mhm.
I'm maybe about halfway through the main story.
Roundabout, yeah.
I'm at a point where I'm going to golden path it. because I want to finish it. I want to see the end of the story, and I'm nervous that things are going to start getting spoiled for me. Something was spoiled for me by PlayStation Lifestyle the other day.
Oh
Actually,
no.
yeah, I was just like, "What the fuck?" But it's on me. So anyway, in terms of the Game Awards in general, is there or the PlayStation announcements, I should say, was there anything that was maybe your favorite thing that PlayStation brought there? Was it Burning Shores? Was it Death Stranding 2? Was there anything that like really stuck out to you as like that was the coolest thing I saw there?
Yeah, Death Stranding 2 was the big one for me,
Yeah.
and Suicide Squad were like the three
Mm.
things that stood out to me. Yeah, were yeah. So Suicide Squad got me in a way that I wasn't expecting. So
Hmm.
I'm a big comic book fan from way back,
Okay.
and a big massive fan of the Arkham series when it comes to the games. So Kevin Conroy is my Batman. When I read comics, I hear Kevin Conroy.
Hmm.
When I obviously when I play the games, I hear Kevin Conroy. He is the voice that lives inside my head when it comes for Batman.
Yeah.
And having him pass recently, it hit me harder than I expected. So to know that this is his final role and to sort of getting to hear him again, and it bookends with that, thank you Kevin,
Hmm.
like that hit a string for me.
Yeah.
So that was like, oh, that's a massive win for me right there. And with Death Stranding 2, absolutely love Death Stranding 1.
Yeah.
Like
Same.
it hits. I'm a I, for there's a big throughput with the games that I love. It's emotional connection. It's really strong narrative
Mm.
and like having something to say, I guess. And the reason I love God of War so much, it's a brilliant father-son story that talks about, the a father's fear of the past in terms of the mistakes that they've made re-emerging and affecting the child, which resonates with me something fierce.
Sure.
And with Death Stranding, like there are certain beats within it, as bullshit as it is. Like there's the stuff with Mama was fantastic,
Hmm.
especially being a father. This whole rebuilding an interconnected world, which if anything only hits harder now in a post-pandemic time where we were all isolated from one another, and the only thing connecting us were these wires, were these lone delivery
Yeah.
men, like bracing the outside world to
Isn't that,
send us bullshit.
isn't that fucking wild how he does that stuff? Kojima,
Yeah,
meaning
yeah.
Kojima.
And like with that, yeah, Kojima, there's a beauty in Death Stranding in that,
Hmm.
yeah, there are times where it's just about getting from A to B and how you do it and taking in the vista and only really having to worry about balancing your character, like, and bringing it down to its kind of bare bones, stripping it down really worked. And then it's surrounded by these awesome set pieces at the end and really cool character work. Because when there's all this downtime, it's focus on character, right?
Hmm.
Not that there isn't good gameplay, but it hits different in the same way that like Metal Gear Solid is really story focused, but it's also back end with fun gameplay. And yeah, I left. So when I was heading into Death Stranding, I was asking myself like, am I like a Metal Gear fan or am I a Kojima fan?
Mm.
Because like watching these trailers, these are batshit. Like I don't know what I'm looking at. What the fuck is all this?
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't
And
it,
then
it didn't look like a
once
game that's for me. That's for sure.
No, and then when you realize that all those trailers are like big set piece, big key moments of the game, and no one knew,
Yeah.
made it even better. And then being very lucky in the same way with Ragnarok and the original God of War. So we were provided review codes by PlayStation Australia, which allowed us to play it pre-release. So very quickly I got to go, oh no, I'm a Kojima fan, but I had no one to talk to about it. It was really hard.
I know.
It's one of those advantages and disadvantages of the space, and you can kind of see why there becomes this disconnect between games journalists and the audience, because
Hmm.
like the embargo for Ragnarok was a week and a half before it released.
Hmm.
I already had it a month
Yeah.
prior to the embargo, right? So like I'd played it, finished it, released a review, and it still wasn't even out yet. And then a week later, it's like, oh, your collector's edition's able to be picked up. I'm like, oh yeah. It's such a weird disconnect. And I did the
Yeah.
same with Death Stranding. And then it was really kind of cool getting to watch people sort of understand what this game is trying to say. And, a lot of that mystery here is gone because we know what Death Stranding is,
Right.
but there was enough in that trailer to lay down of like, what the hell is all this? Like the baby at the start. Is
Mm,
that Lou outside of the jar?
mm,
Awesome. Fantastic. Fragile. She's there holding the baby. Are Fragile and Sam Porter Bridges, doing some sort of cool co-parenting thing. That's cool.
yeah.
You know,
Do you think Norman Reedus is the main character in this one?
I don't know.
Mm,
Part of me expects the Metal Gear Solid 2 switcheroo
mm, mm-hmm.
in that, you think you're playing a snake, you're playing, jokes on you, you're playing as Raiden the whole time. Or at
Right.
least the first half. So I'm expecting maybe something like that. I mean, no, the Fanning girl,
Oh yeah, we
Elle Fanning.
hadn't even seen her yet. Yeah.
And like the rumor, the little theory that I enjoy is that that's Lou.
Oh, interesting.
Because we look and we see Norman Reedus substantially older.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know we got hit by the timefall rain in the first game, and that aged his hair, right?
Yeah, fair.
So we're like, is he affected by the timefall? The timefall? Is this literally so far in the future that we're now playing as Lou? A lot of things to consider, and of course, it won't make any sense until we play it. But seeing Troy Baker, what we presume is Troy Baker's character return.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the interesting torso, like their guts have been rebuilt.
Yeah.
And of course, it fits that weird 80s bullshit that just Kojima loves.
Yeah.
With the keytar.
Yeah.
It asks so many more questions than it delivers. It's got weird, like, continuing on that sort of sea theme with the whales and the crabs and the fish. We now have, octopus in the BB thingy, which
Oh
is
yeah.
which is cool. There's a lot of things to play, and like Death Stranding 2 looks brilliant. If like that's kind of its code name at the moment, I don't know whether it's going to be called something else,
Right.
but that's probably the thing that got me most excited. What about yourself?
It looks wonderful. I don't know if Death Stranding 2 was my like the thing that got me the most excited. I'm not sure. I think it might have actually been something else, which is it's really obscure. But before I tell you, I do want to say that Death Stranding 2 looks incredible. And of
Yeah, it
course,
looks
it was
great.
only cinematic. It seemed like it might have been in engine, I'm sure, on Decima. But the thing about Death Stranding and its sequel is, and Kojima really, is that he creates these things, and in particular Death Stranding, that's like mysterious and it's like existential, and it's like I don't know, there's just nothing like it. Like I really think that as time has gone on, Death Stranding to me personally gotten even has become even better, like in my mind.
Yeah.
Because at the time it was kind of like, what the fuck is this? Like, is this a walking simulator? Like, people were so upset before the game came out. They're like, oh, Kojima made a fucking walking simulator. Okay. But then you play the game and you're like, oh, okay. And you get it. And then now
You're
looking,
still like, oh, he made a walking simulator, but it's
yeah,
awesome.
yes, exactly. It's like, it's the best walking simulator ever made. Then you look back on it, I'm like, wow, that really was something. And then the second one, I can only imagine what he's going to do. But the one thing that really sticks with me when I think about Death Stranding, and I never considered this, but when the PS5 upgrade came out, people, were going back to the game, which I've never played it on PS5. I've thought about it. But people were going back to the game when the PS5 director's cut came out, and they were loading into their saves from PS4, and then they were going out in the world and they were discovering that the bridges that they built and like the structures that they built and stuff like that were falling apart because time had passed, even though they weren't playing the game. Like it had been a year
Mm.
since they played the game, and they went back and their bridge was destroyed by a timefall rain. And it was still there. They built it when they played the game when it originally came out. And now it's just, nothing. It had rusted or whatever the fuck. And like when you think about that, like that is so cool. Like that is such a cool feature of a game and just a design choice. And like, I don't know, man, that is so cool to me. And that just, that stuff like that is what sticks to me about Death Stranding and makes me excited thinking about the second one, or little things like that. It's just, there's nothing quite like it, I don't think. But one of the things that got me the most excited was, believe it or not, this game called Wayfinder. I don't know if you remember that one or not, but that's like a online uh, MMO action RPG thing that is being made by Airship Syndicate. It's the guys who made Darksiders Genesis and some other stuff, and it's being published by Digital Extremes, who does Warframe, obviously. But PlayStation, I guess, has got this on some type of like timed exclusive or something. It's
Mhm.
actually going to be a beta test in January, and then like a spring early access thing, kind of like Arcadegeddon was like in 21, I guess. But
Yeah,
um,
you got because the yourself and you guys were like big fans of Arcade Again. My brain just
yes,
farted on the word Arcade Again. It wouldn't let it come out of my mouth. So
yes,
my brain literally stopped for a second. I was like, and you're like,
yeah,
fuck. Yeah, there, Arcade Again. There you go.
yeah, yes. It's okay. Your brain can fart. We can all fart. But yeah, we
Yeah,
love
my
we.
my Ritalin hasn't quite kicked in yet. I woke up late because I'm on leave. It's awesome.
I love it. No, we loved Arcadegeddon, and so it sort of looks that way, I guess, in terms of art style. But I'm very excited about that. The Wayfinder game. The other one that really stood out to me too was that Behemoth VR game that looks like kind of like, even though I don't like Dark Souls, it looks kind of like Dark Souls or like a really like more hardcore Skyrim mixed with Shadow of the Colossus. Did you see that one in the show?
Which one was that? Sorry.
It's called Behemoth. It's a VR game, and it
Yeah, I think I did say that one. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like it looks like you're fighting like Draugr at some point from like Skyrim, and then you're like climbing up this big Shadow of the Colossus looking thing in VR. Dude, that looked, I mean, it was a cinematic. Okay, I understand that,
Mm.
but that looked incredible. So those were kind of the two things that really stood out to me. Of course, Death Stranding did too, but out of the sort of kind of mainstream things, those really stood out to me a lot. But I thought overall that it was a really good show. In fact, I was trying to think back, and I guess this is the ninth year that Keighley's done the Game Awards, I think. And I don't know, man. I think that this is one of the best, like overall, in my opinion. Like you said, he kind of toned down the ad bullshit. The ones that we did have were more like tasteful, I would say, kind of, subdued a little bit. Had a pretty good pace outside of Christopher Judge's acceptance speech, whatever that was about.
Yeah, but see, I obviously being the huge fan that I
Uh
am,
oh.
like
You
I'm
don't
like,
mind it?
oh, cool. I didn't mind it. I'm like, where are you going with this?
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess for me is because like this may be the last time he ever gets to do this, right?
Yeah.
And
Fair.
he
Fair.
did deliver one of the most exceptional performances ever. In terms of, I would argue, for a game, in that
Hmm.
because Kratos was a character that no one liked, right?
Sure.
It was bland, he was boring, he was this, that, is the other. He managed to make him intriguing, emotional, in an like it provide nuance. Like this is a high quality performance. Like when you're playing other characters, even if you look at once again recent examples like your Horizon Forbidden West, like with Aloy, is emotive, right?
Yeah.
By design because she is human and she is expressive. Where Kratos, by design, was bland. He was fueled by one emotion, that was rage. Where here we're seeing the presentation of an individual, an alteration of an understanding of a character, in that their entire emotional delivery is different in the way that Christopher Judge is able to deliver a that means
Yeah.
six different things depending on the tone, and then alongside the incredible motion capture where you're seeing subtle eye movements and little smirks and these little things that as you sort of see him grow and become more open as a character to not just like Atreus but also his new family around him. There's nothing else like it.
Right.
But did he go too long? Oh yeah, he did. But like, I'm like, where are you going with this, mate? Like, I appreciate what you're doing, but where are you going?
Right.
And I don't think like the landing. Like they added the music. If anything, it just made it more intense. I was like, oh, hell yeah, go, yes, do it. And then they had to cut him real short. But like,
Yeah.
yeah,
He definitely went too long. But I will say, in his defense, I thought Keeley, and maybe he was being lighthearted about it, but Keeley kind of took shots at him.
yeah, he was a right prick about it.
Yeah, I
See,
agree.
this is the other problem that I have with the Game
I
Awards, and this
agree.
happens all the time. Is that Jeff Keighley
Hmm.
is a great organizer of it. I don't think he's the best presenter for it.
Hmm.
Not because he's not good at it, because he's too close
Right.
in terms of the investment, right? So
Right.
his entire every time you see him speak, it's not about it's constantly all right. We've got to keep moving forward. You got to keep moving forward. Got to keep moving forward. So it
Mhm.
has a different emotive feel.
Right.
Like it feels really rushed whenever he's on camera because he's in his head. He's in production mode, right? It's like we've got to hit these awards. We've only got this much time. Da, 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 da.
That is true.
So these pot shots ain't pot shots. Like they were barbs,
Yeah.
right? And that's the difference. Where like Al Pacino didn't get shit on, even though because he couldn't
He
even
couldn't
read
read.
the teleprompter. And they're like, well, he wasted a bunch of extra time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the mindset going in is like example. If you watch, say, was it the Dice Awards? I think it was, like Greg Miller does.
Mhm.
Like his delivery in it is, I'm here as a host. Like I'm just here as a host. I'm not in the production side, the back end. I don't need to worry about all that sort of things. I'm just here to make the show look good and run well.
Right.
Where Jeff is trying to do that while also being very conscious of everything else around him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying get another host, because they did it that one year with Joel McHale and it was horrendous.
Mm.
But there's either have a second with him, or they have the woman whose name escapes me,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
did the pre-show stuff. But that's just me personally. It's a minor. It's not a minor nitpick. It's quite an obvious nitpick. But
No, I think that's fair. I get where you're coming from, and he definitely comes off as more of a producer while he's doing the show. And I told Travis, like, on our show, that Keighley, by all accounts, is a very nice man, and
oh, most certainly,
he's definitely an advocate for games. He definitely plays games, which I appreciate. It's more than you can say for some people, Jim Ryan, and
yeah,
so I appreciate that. But he does toe the line, in my opinion, from what I call a marketing bro. Like
yes,
he walks the line the tightest of being a marketing bro and then being one of us. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
So I think that's to your point about how he kind of handled the show and handles the show in general. But I also wanted to talk to you too about kind of moving on from the Game Awards. I wanted to talk to you about PlayStation VR2 because the last time you and I talked, and Travis was here too, back in the summer, maybe even the spring, we talked about, and we at the time we kind of tried to predict, what we thought was going to happen the rest of this year and the first part of next year. But now, fast forward to now, we understand that PSVR2 is coming out February 22nd. You can pre-order it now, all that good stuff. We know what it is. We know what it can do. We know the hardware. We know a lot of the games, if not all of them, that are going to be there at launch. Although I I do want to point out that Sony has some type of consumer electronics show presentation planned for January 4th, and PSVR2 seems to be featured prominently in that in some
hmm
way. So that's curious. But so generally at the start, what is your gut check on PSVR2? Are you going to get it? Are you excited about it? What do you think of it?
oh yeah, no, I totally have one.
Mhm.
Yes, my pre-order went in the second they went live, even though it's $880 Australian. Um,
Jesus.
yeah, so patreon.com/popculturist, please, thank you. Uh, we'll cover the game so you don't have to buy them.
There you go. That's a good pitch.
So that way you know whether it's worth your money. You invest $20, helps us get the unit, and we're very lucky in that we'll have the opportunity to play all get all the games that matter on
Yeah.
the headset, so we can go, well, these are the exact games. This is the pitch aside.
Mhm.
I'm very excited. I do love PSVR.
Yeah.
I didn't play any games this year according to my wrap up, which checks out because I've been living in this house for a year and I haven't set it up once because it's
Mm.
such a prick. So what I love about what is the potential of PSVR2 is, that room scale. It's the increase in tech. This is what it should be.
Mm.
Will this still not be perfect? Most certainly. Like, the benefits of, say, your Vives or your Oculuses is that they started with more powerful hardware and they intentionally were able to do a lot of these bigger things first, but they were noticeably more expensive, right?
Right.
PSVR made the entry point VR in that had the big grunt of it is on the PlayStation. They had the breakout box, which helped, but even then you had to have about 17 cables.
Yeah.
So they're finally at the point now where they can one cable it. They have the better controllers, because like the Move controllers were great. I think they essentially were like, well, we just need to find a way to use this gear that we have over here, because the R&D and cost of entry to create these controllers
Mhm.
is a lot for the first unit. So
Sure.
now that they've demonstrated what PSVR is and can do, having the entry point be more expensive with the increased control, like, hey, these controllers can do more. This is why it's costs more, because it's all these extra features. Everyone's a bit more understanding. If this was the original version of PSVR and this was the original asking price, it would have no way have had the pickup that it did previously.
I was going to ask you about the price, 550 US and 800 how many ever dollar dues out there in your.
$880 dues.
Yeah, it's obviously quite a bit. It's obviously more expensive than PlayStation 5 as well. Um
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
and
Well, in here, yeah, it's about that. About $900 for a PS5 at the moment
gotcha. Okay. So,
with God of War.
yeah. So do you that's I guess that's been a lot of the conversation, at least at the very start. It's gone quiet, honestly, on the PSVR2 front in terms of public perception of it. But when it was first announced, that was the conversation. Is like, holy shit, this thing is more expensive than the PS5 in the US. $550. Like, how the fuck are they thinking they're going to sell this thing? So, I
Mm.
guess what is your response to that, or what is your thought on that in terms of, okay, they've got this headset now. They obviously want to sell it, or they wouldn't have made it. They've put more technology into this, as you said, in terms of the controllers and what it's capable of in general, and they're putting what appears to be, some first party spunk behind it, in terms of Fire Sprite with Horizon and whatever else we might have that we don't know about later down the road. So, I guess what is your thought on, okay, hey, they will obviously want to sell this thing, but it's more than the PS5. How what's the what's the argument there? I guess, or do you think that's a smart idea, them pricing it the way they have?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
VR in itself is a boutique item, right?
Hmm.
It isn't something that everyone has that has access to. Now, the difficulty that they have is PlayStation in no way envisioned a global pandemic that would
Hmm.
involve all these shortages, etc. So they're still following the exact same trajectory at their marketing trajectory and production trajectory that they intended.
Right.
Console was still going to come out at this time, but I think it came out later than they originally envisioned. They in no way did they predict that there would be this much shortage. So I think they felt very confident that by releasing it essentially 2.5 years after the release of the console, that's enough time for everyone to have a good hold on a PS5.
Right.
Turns out, not the case. They're much harder to get now than they were before, but not really. I'm seeing them readily pick upable. I can
Yeah.
walk into an EB Games here in Geelong in Australia and just grab one off the shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely getting easier to get those.
Yeah, that's gotten better, but the difficulty is people aren't. They just about to spend $900 on a console.
Yeah.
They can't do that 3 months later
Right.
on a PSVR. So I think PSVR will have a longer tail
Mhm.
in the same way that we're seeing, like, the PS5 version of Miles Morales make the top 10 every month because
Fair.
more people are getting PS5s every month. Like, it's not a big, there's, especially when it comes to this transition to this new generation, there's not a lot of money up front. We're going to see a lot. It's spread out and slower. So little bits, medium money's everywhere rather than big lump sum extra large. And I think
Right.
PS5, so I think the PSVR2 will do the same thing. You'll have your diehards like myself, and I presume you might be grabbing it as well,
Yeah. I've got it pre-ordered. I'm
at
ready to go.
launch. And we'll see a big burst then, but then we'll slowly see it go out as people are hesitant. We are in a recession.
Yeah.
Money is less available than it ever has been before. But for those that can, will. And that will dictate what happens moving forward. Now, there's approximately like what, 2, not even 3 million PSVR 1s out in the wild. And I
Mm.
guarantee you that they have not sold any or very few since they announced the PSVR 2. So that's
Yeah.
gone slow. The greater challenge that PSVR 2 holds outside of its cost, which is barrier of entry number one, needing the PS5, is the games.
Oh yeah.
Now, granted, they have a lot of games coming out at the front end.
Yeah.
We are getting the cool things like Call of the Mountain, and there's the Hello Neighbor game that'll make my son explode. But a majority of the other things that are the big hitters at the moment
Yeah.
are ports. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that's a bad thing. We're getting PSVR 1 games ported up. That's great. We're getting PC VR games brought across. That's great. But what's the incentive? Like, if you're someone that is a massive VR fan,
Mm.
you may already have that other headset.
Yeah.
Where, like myself, my PC is hot trash. So I ain't buying. I don't have another VR headset, right?
Right.
And once again, I have readily available access to titles if I want to. It's got to email some people. I'm sure it'll rock up. And I don't play my VR that often.
Right.
So imagine people that don't have that availability. They don't have, because when they're charging very expensive games comparatively, not a bad thing, but they're shorter experiences. They do take a lot more time to develop. Therefore, the price, I think, is reflective. But that means there's less games that will be purchased. It's really tough.
Yeah.
They make a niche product, and then if they're interested, they're like, why is it being purchased like a niche product? Because you made a niche product.
You did. You did, and you make compelling points. And yes, I kind of touched on it, or alluded to it, I guess I should say. But this could potentially have the same problem that the PlayStation Vita did in terms of the support started out very strong in the first
Mm.
couple of years. We were getting first party stuff and even some second party things. We were getting Uncharted, we were getting Killzone, whatever. We were in all that type of stuff, and then it just dried up. And that definitely, I mean, that obviously happened, I think, with the first PSVR, and then it seems like they're a little bit behind it more with VR2. But like you said, I think it's a real fear that we might have the games dry up. You also have to wonder from first party from PlayStation Studios, like, are there even resources to make dedicated VR games? Is it even smart to do so? What is in other words, if they only sell 5 million, 6 million PSVR2s lifetime. So is that worth dedicating a team at, I don't know, Sony Santa Monica, Sucker Punch to make a VR game for PSVR2? I don't know. On the contrary, though, if they did that and they made a banger for PSVR2 and it's a system seller, you know, I guess that's a counter argument. I don't know. I think it's a tough proposition. You know what I'm saying?
It most certainly is, because especially when you got the likes of Gorilla Cambridge, who
Yeah.
they were given the rough end of the stick. They were given no win scenarios,
Yeah.
really. So that was kind of a bit of a different tale.
They made
But
rigs,
London
right?
studio, they did rigs, yeah. So London studio did PSVR Worlds. They did Blood and Truth, which is exceptional.
Hmm.
Now they're shifted into that cool London fantasy game, so they're not even really doing VR stuff at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think the difference here in why I think we may see more games, maybe not first party games, but we may see more games on the PSVR2 is, as
Hmm.
we were discussing before, the tech now aligns better with the PC VR.
True.
So it's a lot more transferable. We're having to respec the game in order to work with the light bars on the moves.
Yeah.
That's the harder sell. In that now, in theory, I don't know how development works on a VR game,
Hmm.
but it's probably much easier to just read the controller, read the different controller, rather than completely alter how the game reads movement and how it reads room space.
Sure.
So it wouldn't surprise me if more games start coming across in order to meet that demand. Now, apparently the touch rate's not too bad for those that have the headsets.
Hmm.
PlayStation first party, I don't know. I think Insomniac had done some cool VR in their time,
Yeah.
from memory.
Yeah. I don't
But
remember who that was
they're
for.
all, yeah, but they're handling like 1,000 things right now. So I
Mhm.
don't see them rushing to do that either.
No.
Yeah, outside of little experiences
Hmm.
like Call of the Mountain, which is being, essentially done by Firesprite alongside Gorilla, kind of coming in there as like a presumable lore and like, hey, here's some assets.
Right.
Like Firesprite's the main beat, I think, when it comes to VR. And I think the challenge that they will have is there's only so much they can do.
Hmm.
And VR development takes longer and it's harder, especially in a working from home setup. You need people, you need to
Sure.
have the headset strapped to someone. The development method of a VR, in theory, is staggeringly different to standard game development. But we saw the impact of working from home and separated workforces on standard games.
Sure.
So I imagine it's going to be gnarlier on here. There's a big reliance on old games being moved up, I think.
Right. So in terms of games, since we're talking about games for PSVR 2, of what we've seen so far of what has been announced and or that we know is coming, is there anything, again, that same question to you, is there anything that you are in particular or particularly excited about, I should say? Horizon, I'm sure, but is there anything that stands out to you on the launch lineup?
Horizon's the given.
Yeah.
I really am super sold on that, because one of the greatest things about VR is scale, right?
Hmm.
And nothing else matches it. So looking up and seeing a tall neck in its brilliant fidelity,
Mm.
get it in me, right? That's going to
Oh
be
yeah, get it in me.
awesome. Speaking of get it in me, I like then Resident Evil Village,
Mm.
like, big tall vampire woman, yeah,
Hmm.
dope.
Yeah, step on me.
Like that looks, yeah, please do. That looks fantastic. And obviously going off, Resident Evil 7, which was awesome in VR, a really dope experience. They're probably the big ones for me,
Mhm.
right? That's easy. But what's they're doing my once again brain farting. What is it? Supermassive did
Oh, the
Until
Switchback VR?
Dawn. Yeah, the Switchback VR. Because I
Mhm.
did like Rush of Blood. Rush of Blood was awesome. It's a
Yeah.
really good bit of fun. So to have, something like that, I'm like, oh, that's cool too. Okay.
Yeah.
The extension of that is always fun. But the Star Wars one is a big in. Like I played the Vader Immortal, and that
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
Oh, yeah.
That was fantastic. I really dig that tabletop role playing game that they've got in
Demio?
VR, which is really cool. Yeah,
Demio?
that one looks fantastic too.
Yeah, it does.
Firewall has got a lot of love. Saints and Sinners is another one that I know is really positive
Yeah.
on the first VR. So having that come across, yeah, Beat Saber is a must. And for me, it's just bring me cool shit and I'll play it.
Yeah.
Like I don't have any expectations around what it needs to be. If
Mhm.
it's there, I'm in.
I gotta tell you, I'm very excited about PSVR 2. I don't know why. I really have no reason. I've never played VR. I've never experienced VR, period. So I could put this thing on and I could not have I could never get my
Oh wait,
VR.
have you never experienced VR? Period.
No, period. So I could put this thing on and
Oh,
I
that
could
does change everything.
I know. So my fear is that I put this thing on and I've heard that you should do it the first time sitting down is what I've heard.
Yeah.
And so I'll do that. But my fear is that I do this and I never get my VR legs and motion sickness and all that. So if that's the case, I gave it a fair shake and I'll sell it or whatever. But in the interim, I'm extremely excited about it. There are several games, in fact, that have me quite excited. And as a matter of fact, I bought my first two PSVR2 games today because there are some games that, as you mentioned, are getting the free upgrade to the
Mhm.
PS5, and there's a couple of games on sale on the big holiday sale. So I went ahead today and bought After the Fall, which is like that Left for Dead sort of game for it,
Mhm.
and then I also purchased Pistol Whip. So I have
Yeah,
my
Fist Whip's awesome.
yeah. So I have my first two ready to go in the barrel. But some other ones that I'm very excited about is Kayak VR Mirage. Have you
Mm.
heard anything about this?
And off the top of my head, no.
You should look it up. Kayak VR Mirage, and it looks stunning. So I'm looking forward to
Oh,
checking.
it's kayak as in a kayak. Oh, fascinating.
A
Okay.
kayak. Yeah, it looks pretty stunning. Some other ones that are standing out to me right now are Firewall Ultra. You mentioned that.
Yep.
That looks dope. The Cities VR looks dope. That's on my list as well because I loved City Skylines on PS4. And then another one is Moss and Moss Book 2. I've heard those are very good.
Yeah, Moss 1 is exceptional. Moss 2 I didn't pick up.
Oh,
And apparently no one else did.
yeah. Yeah.
So I'm keen to give Moss 2 a go.
Yeah. And then, like you said, the Saints and Sinners comes out in March, and as a or chapter two, I should say, and then I think they're doing like a twin pack sort of thing, or like a complete
Mm.
edition or whatever. So that looks pretty interesting. So there's a lot of stuff coming and then that Behemoth game, obviously that I mentioned from the Game Awards, looks incredible. So there's a lot of stuff that has me very excited about it, but I'm also nervous that my excitement is misplaced because I may not be able to use the thing. But there's no way to know until I do it. So
I think with the improved technology, there is a lot of there's a less chance of having those motion problems.
yeah,
Because it's just it higher resolution, the foveated vision, so where it blurs everything outside of what you're looking directly at,
true.
is really dope. In that it will run better. It's more reflective of how you legitimately see the world, so that will have its advantages. The problem that VR has with your brain is when your brain connects that it's not real, and
Yeah.
that's where that psychology comes in. So when you can have
Mhm.
those cool immersive environments or immersive experiences that make you forget, and your body can go, "Oh, this is what I'm doing."
Mhm.
So even I myself, who has I can have pretty gnarly motion sickness.
Yeah.
VR, whenever I put VR on, there is a small window where my body adjusts. So I just kind of play conservative for that little window, and then once it's going, and then I can get more into it. So I'll always tend to sort of front load my session with a simpler game to get me used to
Hmm.
my body into it, and then I go cool, and then I'll go do something
Interesting.
way more gnarly or way more fun.
Okay.
That's probably the safest bet.
That's good
And
advice.
yeah, so like even myself who has like a fear of heights as well, so doing that as well, like it's always the fun thing to do. So push my comfort zone with VR,
Mm-hmm.
which is yeah. So like my partner, she has never done VR in her entire life at all either, same as yourself. And so I've been showing her some of these cool, trailers and stuff, and she's super keen, super keen.
Yeah,
So like, yeah, call them out, and she's like, "This looks exceptional." I'm like, it does.
it does.
So I'm very excited to do that as well, and it's very fast. I'm especially keen for yourself, knowing that you've not done it before either.
Yeah. I hope it hits,
Because yeah,
man.
VR1 is I think it will, because VR1's cool, but like it's fine, but
Yeah.
this is going to be something else. Like yeah, once again, the example is that I think even Sean Layden mentioned way back in the day was that this is version 1. This is the PS1. And you remember the jump from PS1 to PS2?
Yeah.
Expect that. Like we're going to see a substantial improvement.
That would be wild. And I hope that is. And the last thing that I wanted to ask you about VR2 is, do you think you mentioned that this is a niche product, and it is. It's a boutique, it's a niche product. It's something that the more hardcore, like yourself and myself, we've already pre-ordered. For instance, we're fine with we're into it. We're fine with paying the money for it, etc. But one of the arguments that I make on our show a lot, and I may have talked with you about this before too, but I sort of feel like, and maybe PSVR2 will make me feel differently or prove me wrong, but I feel like given the success of Switch, given the success of Steam Deck, I feel like almost that PlayStation, meaning Sony, made the wrong bet in terms of they should have bet on hybrid gaming or handheld gaming, whatever you want to call it, instead of VR2, instead of virtual reality. Do you feel that way, or do you think that this is just, this is the niche that they decided to chase after as opposed to handheld gaming? But do you have any thoughts about that?
I disagree almost entirely.
Oh, okay.
In that as much as I enjoy the Vita and the Sony handheld experience with the PSP,
Hmm.
that was a losing market for them. Like no matter what they did, Nintendo had them beat. Now,
That's
granted, does
fair.
that mean they should have given up that
Yeah.
market? No, not at all. But right now, they have a market all to themselves.
Hmm.
In that there is no other console manufacturer, whether it be Nintendo or Microsoft, that are doing this VR, let alone relatively expensive entry level VR.
It's a good point.
Microsoft have essentially, I think, said previously, they're like, oh, yeah, it's not something that we have plans for.
Hmm.
Nintendo, like, oh, we thought about it with that cardboard thing, but like, you imagine trying to strap that low ass resolution screen to your face.
Yeah.
Ew. So the downside of portable is the restrictive hardware.
Mm.
In that the Switch was already underpowered on delivery.
Yeah, true.
It's X amount of years later, 4 years, 5 years later, nothing can run on it. Well, like when it's impressive that a game can run at 540 at 30 frames per second, that's not good. Like that's not the future. And I think there is an upbeat in those handheld ways of playing, but in a working from home scenario, in the world as it is now, people are less wanting to sit on a train for commute to work and play games.
That's also a
People
really
like
good
being
point.
home. So having a cool experience like this at home that is impressive, it's a cool centerpiece to your lounge.
Hmm.
And when no one else is doing it, that's what you should do. Do I mean Sony should never make a handheld? No, I most certainly think they should make a competing handheld at some point. But even then, like the Nintendo, underpowered, selling incredibly well.
Hmm.
The target audience for that game is different, even different to what Sony market their games towards.
True.
The Steam Deck, incredibly expensive,
Hmm.
not even available in this country.
Oh, wow.
So, it's huge, it's chunky, is it endless possibilities? Yeah, it's essentially running a small PC. It's brilliant.
Hmm.
But it's not as easy either It's like carrying a laptop. The battery life is fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It has great potential, but I don't know, VR in itself, anytime you release hardware, it's like a car. You release a car and it instantly diminishes because you know in like 6 months something better is going to come out.
True.
And like something will push the boundaries of that console almost immediately.
Well, you make a fair argument.
But I think that the potential and the future possibilities are way larger in VR, whether it be from a gameplay, games, whether it be from experiences like, you know,
True.
going and seeing a museum tour, or with something. There's something that I still am baffled that no one ever did over the pandemic.
Yeah.
Let me buy tickets to a concert.
Yeah. Yeah. Put me front row. I'll pay whatever, $200 to be front row in VR.
Yeah. So like if you're normally paying, say, $200 for a ticket in an arena, but like so let's say nosebleeds, $100, $150 in the middle, $200 at the front. Standard pricing, for tickets.
Yeah.
Well, what if you made it 30 and 80 and 150? It's slightly cheaper, but those that are international will buy. Or you just put a good 3D, a 360 camera, boom, suddenly you're there. And like you have the potential to increase your revenue. Like, well, then people wouldn't come to the show. Right. Yeah, but imagine all the people international that would do that.
No, people would still come to the show. You would just, in my opinion, that would just be all that more additional income, to your point. Like,
yeah, and no one's really touched upon that, right? Like, I'm a massive wrestling fan, right? And a number of years ago, there was an app that released that had 360 cameras set up at WrestleMania. So I got to put it on. I got to see the amazing entrances. I got to see the wrestling in the ring all through my VR headset. And I was literally moved to tears because it's such a sensory overload in the best way. But I got to feel, even for a moment, that I was at the biggest wrestling show in the world.
That is sick.
And that was a free experience. I'm like, if I would pay money for that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be like, here's money. Let me watch friggin' 7 hours of WrestleMania in VR. Like I'm there.
That is sick. I mean, and really, it's amazing that we don't have that more widespread at this point, honestly. Yeah, I do agree with you on that. And if you think about it, like, I'm sure it's hard not to here, but I'm sure you've heard about all of like the Taylor Swift concert ticket controversy that happened recently.
Yeah, like is it Ticketmaster or whatever?
Ticketmaster problem. So like, okay, Taylor Swift tickets, when they go on sale, they're sold out in like whatever, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. So, okay, then imagine you could, like you said, you could sell X amount more of VR space. Maybe it's unlimited. I don't know. Maybe it's just server capacity. And let's say you could sell 10,000 more VR tickets. Dude, I mean, not that I care how much money those people make, but I'm just saying, like, that seems like, I think that, to your point, people would want that experience, and they would adore that type of experience, and they would pay for that type of experience. And so I do agree with you that I think that VR definitely shows more promise, no doubt, than a handheld console. Not just in gaming, like you said, but entertainment, in sports. I would love to, I would pay for like a season pass to my favorite basketball team or something like that. If I could be courtside every game, you know what I'm saying? And I could just sit on my couch, put my headset on, and watch the game. Like, that would be dope. To your point, that'd be so sick. And I mean, that's coming, right? Like, in our lifetime, everything we're talking about will be available, surely. So,
totally. But like, I went back and watched the 2016 Sony E3 press conference the other day. Mm-hmm. That's when PSVR was announced. It's been like, what, 6 years?
True.
And we're not there yet. Like, how much longer is it going to take to get there?
True.
So now, granted, the world stopped still for 2 of those years, but
yeah.
Like, we are now aware, if more than ever before, how important an online space is, how easy online accessibility is.
Yeah, I
agree. Just take it to that next step. I understand there's like, but we want people in the arena. It's not going to take away people from the arena, because if you're going to do a show here in Melbourne, I'm going to go to the show in Melbourne. But
Yeah.
if you're doing it in a one-off show in Sydney or a one-off show in LA or wherever,
Mhm.
I can't get to that easily. So you're getting more because I say like you don't care how much money they're making, neither do I. But that's what the incentive needs to be
Yeah.
because they won't do it out of the pure creative endeavor of it.
No.
If they can think about it from the money side, it's like think about how much more money you'll get, and suddenly they go, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." Not that anyone would listen to me. I'm just some dude on the internet in Australia, but
Yeah, and I
like it's
think
just
that
the idea.
yeah, and I think that was my point too in terms of, the question I was asking you as far as, what is it going to take for PlayStation, Sony to go more to do more than what I would call is it's not a what we're seeing is not a half measure per se. It's a little bit more than that, but like what's going to take for them to take like a full measure toward VR, specifically PSVR2. And I think that all ties into what we're talking about. I think we're talking, we're kind of dancing around it, but I think you're hitting the nail on the head too at the same time in terms of it needs to be more of a more holistic
Mm.
experience that because think about Sony, and I want to move on after this because I want to talk to you about 2023, but think about Sony in particular. They have Sony Pictures, which is film and television. They have Sony Music Group, which is music, obviously. PlayStation, like of all of the entertainment companies in the world, I don't know how many companies have their tendrils in all of those things. I mean, Sony Pictures is a big company that does big films and big television. Sony
They
Music,
own Blu-ray.
yeah,
They make a cut on every Blu-ray disc printed.
yes. Sony Music is a big music publishing label and company in the world. And then you have PlayStation itself that is one of the biggest console hardware manufacturers, video game publishers in the world. So like they have all of these tendrils. And I just feel like if, to your point, if they could find a way to, and maybe it's not with PSVR2, maybe it's a 3 if there ever is one, to tie it all together and make something really special, then I almost feel like they can create the incentive for themselves to be like, all right, we need to really fucking like hammer down on this thing. We need to put fucking awesome games on it. We need to do concerts, all the things we were just talking about. So I don't
I
know.
to answer your sort of question, like how do they go full force? Like this
Yeah.
is it. I think this is it. I think this is full force.
Okay.
In at least from the best that they could do. Like, yeah, could they dedicate a studio to it? Yeah. But like
Right.
we're working with businesses because this is the game's business, the game's industry.
Mhm.
And whether we like it or not, that comes first and foremost.
Sure.
Money, how the operation, all those sort of risk analysis, all those other businessy words come to play, right? Where if it's just an creative endeavor, cool. Do we return on our investment? Who fucking cares? But that's
Yeah.
not how this works. So I think Sony could do more, most definitely, but I am very aware that they look at the pros and cons about what can we do, what should we do with what we have. Do we
Yeah.
dedicate 100%, 90% of our workforce to something that is 6% of our total
That's fair.
income?
Yeah, that's fair.
Like so not to the so that they have it as reflective. We provide 6% of our workforce to 6% of our income. Example, not real stats by the way. Let's put them out of my butt.
Sure. Yeah.
So that there's that understanding, and like because
Yeah.
PlayStation being the business that they are, and especially as we're looking right now, so under the eyes of Sean Layden, we did see more creative decisions. But looking
for
at
sure.
what Jim Ryan is doing right now, he's a lot more gun shy. Like to
Yeah.
seamlessly transition into what for 2023. Look how reluctant they have been to transition from PS4 to PS5.
Yeah.
They're
After
gun
saying
shy.
that they believed in generations.
Correct.
Mm.
Like, yeah, they had to alter their stance based on the world around them, but that is that gun shyness, right?
Yeah.
In the same way that they'll do just enough because of the dollars. So with the PSVR2, we'll do enough to meet the need and make it work. But are we going to go all ham? Probably not,
Yeah.
because it's just not fiscally valuable.
Because of
Like,
Jim Ryan?
I think he and his idea, his desire for what PlayStation needs to be. You look at their business practices at the moment, right? They're playing safe. Like
Oh, yeah.
gun shy is that key term, right? We're looking remakes, right? Remakes are safe money.
Yeah.
Like we are seeing progression in terms of new IP. Their gun shyness comes across in how quiet they are. because
Mm,
they don't want to announce anything before they should. They
mm.
don't want to announce anything in case it goes bad, right? So they are just holding all their cards to their chest in almost in every way they're working, every decision that they're making. It is really shy and close to the chest. And even if, as we transition to 2023, we look ahead at what they've got. It's pretty quiet.
So speaking of 2023, let's talk about 2023 and what is coming in 2023, what we already know is coming, and what we think could still be coming, and just generally kind of what we feel about the year. So I guess quickly, I'll recap what we know is coming in 2023, and if I'm missing something, then fill in the blanks for me. But
Oh, I know that you're doing that brilliant piece for Gaming Nexus
yeah, thank you.
with all your upcoming games. So free
Yeah,
plug.
thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. Yes, speaking of, I actually did write an article, a little 2023 summary for gamingnexus.com. So this is fairly fresh in my mind, but here's what what is coming from either PlayStation Studios directly, a second party, them publishing as a second party, or a third party like exclusive deal. So we have Forspoken coming January 24th. That's a third party timed exclusive. We have Season, A Letter to the Future, which is a third party timed exclusive indie game, from what I can tell. In February, obviously, the big one is PSVR 2, the headset itself, and Horizon Call of the Mountain from PlayStation Studios. We also have a couple of second party publishing agreements. One is the Switchback VR from Supermassive Games. The other is the Light Brigade. I can't remember the name of the studio, like Funktronic Labs, I think. That is like a roguelite dungeon crawling game. And then there was something else coming in February. I'm drawing a blank on. Might have to pull my article up. And then in April, we are getting Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores. We know that for sure. In June, we've got Final Fantasy 16. That's a third party timed exclusive, obviously, although I don't believe it's a timed exclusive, but they're saying it is right now. And then the other thing that we know is Spider Man 2, which they've put a fall date on, which I believe will be September, 5 years.
Yeah, I'm in the September or possibly October at the
Yeah, so
latest.
5 years to the date from the first game on PS4. So that's what we know is coming. And if there's anything else, you can let me know. But of that, if that lineup stands, well, let me back up. I forgot Silent Hill 2. No, they haven't said 2023 for that. So scratch
No,
that. So
both saying that.
of what we know, what do you think about that lineup so far? Is that enough? What do you think about it? First of all, secondarily, is that enough for 2023?
I think there's more to come.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're just making our way into 2023, and we know that stuff will normally get announced in that early part of the year to back end it. So
Mhm.
very similar to this year. The front year seemed really loaded. The back of the year seemed really quiet. And then as we progressed throughout the year, it suddenly started filling up and filling up and filling up and filling up.
Mhm.
And we're starting to see, parts of next year, the first 6 months, start to get pretty loaded.
Yeah.
From a PlayStation first party perspective, outside of the VR games,
Mhm.
which makes sense, and Spider-Man, which I agree with you, September, October is in that window. That's PlayStation's preferred release window.
Yeah.
They have had some stuff released in November, like God of War Ragnarok, and Last Guardian in December, X amount of years ago. But
Yeah.
they are very reluctant to work within that space because in history has shown, like that's Call of Duty time, that's a bunch of other games that really kind of take the space. As we're moving forward into the continued all digital future where games can release like tomorrow on the 23rd of December if it wants to,
Mhm.
and someone will buy it somewhere, like it doesn't have to be in a shop. So it's not as lumped in the year. And of course with the success of Switch back in the day in March, which was completely out of the ordinary for console release window,
Sure.
there's a bit more freedom in that sense.
Mhm.
Factions is still unknown.
Yep.
We'd certainly hope that's coming bloody soon.
Fuck yeah.
RE4 remake is a huge one for me if we're looking at the
Mhm.
start of the year.
Mhm.
Hogwarts Legacy, after being delayed like a stack of times, is finally coming.
Mhm.
And regardless of, I personally for myself, like I'm still keen to play the game. because I like the world of Harry Potter. I think J.K. Rowling's a dumpster person, but the game itself and the world that they have created, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
And like, it's a separating that art from the artist. Like, she has a say in the a larger creative vision, but what I
Right.
want to see is what this development team have to say about this world, not about what she has to say. Her time has come, has gone.
Sure.
She had her say. She built the beginnings of the world in the same way that, like, I don't know, even George Lucas, right? His Star Wars is done. Not maybe in a bad way, because the ones post him are suck, but the ones he did as well also suck. The original trilogy, the sequel trilogy, no, prequel trilogy. Fuck, the prequel trilogy, pretty shit, and he had full creative control over them. So there's that too.
Right.
But and like, so Hogwarts Legacy has interest for me.
I agree. Same.
Got Dead Space remake, which looks exciting, especially on the back of Callisto Protocol not being as awesome as it could have been. So EA really can either come in and like just swing for the fences and absolutely deliver, or we go, oh, we might recontextualize the Callisto Protocol, which is also kind of dope too.
Yeah.
There's the Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which looks pretty sick. Like, obviously, Fallen Order was really good, really well received. Like, there's a lot of these little things, but like, as far as I guess it depends on who you ask, right? Like, for many people, Diablo 4 is a big centerpiece of the year.
Sure.
Not for me.
No, definitely
You know
not.
what I mean? Like,
definitely not.
they sit in different spots for what has me excited, right? As I'm sure for many, once again, not for me, the Breath of Wild sequel will be massive.
Right.
Street Fighter 6 will be massive. Starfield will be massive.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, you know what I mean?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that.
I think that I said on our show, I think that Spider-Man, the Zelda game, and Starfield are going to be the 3 best-selling games of the year.
Oh, most certainly. Like, you can already
Yeah.
see the three hitters, like,
Oh yeah.
straight up.
Yeah.
You
And they might.
And there's
And
like,
I was gonna say they might all come out around the same time, like within 60 days of each other. It's possible. I don't know if they put any. I don't know if Nintendo has put a date on Zelda or not, but I could see those all
it
3
got
of those coming out.
delayed, I think.
What is it?
It was meant to come out the back end of this year.
Oh, okay. So it might be an
Oh,
early.
so it's been pushed to the 12th of May
Okay.
for The
Well,
Legends of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So it's
so
an
it'll
early one.
yeah, it'll be the first one to strike.
Yeah, pretty much. And then, Spider-Man, which will be in the back end of the year. I
Mhm.
think it would make sense to drop Starfield in the middle of the year. That would put it a 6-month delay from its original 11/11/22.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, I have outside of console preferences, I have very little faith in Microsoft's ability to release any first-party
Yeah.
exclusives.
Oh yeah.
Secondly, I have very limited faith in Bethesda Softworks or software, whatever, to release something of substance. We saw what happened with Fallout 2, especially on the back of The Witcher. We saw a game that was made completely in isolation. We made a game that was completely devoid of understanding of the growth in the RPG space. So they went, oh, we'll make this, and disregarded anything else that came out.
Yes.
They go, this is what people want. Everyone's like, no. Yeah, that's cool if it was like 6 years ago. Like, RPGs have greatly changed. And even on the back of Outer Worlds, by Obsidian, like, that's more Starfield than anything. So Starfield, and like, that was really well received because it was Fallout New Vegas in space.
Right. It looks. I mean,
Unless they completely change their engine,
yes.
which I believe they are, allegedly they are.
No way.
That engine's fucked.
It's big
So
fucked.
they've got to do. There's a lot of expectation on Starfield to deliver, and I think there will be a lot of people that'll just gush on its dick regardless. It's very similar to Cyberpunk. Shit, even similar to myself with Ragnarok, right? Like, I'm like, I know this game's going to be brilliant, and it turned out it was. But
so, kind of circling back, you mentioned that you think that PlayStation has more, that they're not done, that everything that I listed off is not everything in 2023 from them. So I agree with you. I think there's at least one more big title from PlayStation in 2023. So do you have any theories as to what else might be coming in 2023 that we don't know about yet? Is there anything that you feel like it could be in the ether, or any studio that might be due for a release in 2023?
The problem that we have is that almost all the studios are accounted for, which
Mm,
makes it really hard.
right.
So that's it. Like let's run through the list here just very quickly.
Sure.
Polyphony. I've just pulled up Push Square's list of the first party studios, and they've separated them by Japan, Europe, and North America. So it's not alphabetical.
Okay.
Polyphony Digital just released GT7, and
Mhm.
we know that they take a bajillion years between stuff. They're pretty quiet. There's not
Mhm.
much coming out from them. Team Asobi, it's possible we get another Astrobot at some point. Like
Sick.
Astrobot's the one that came with the PS5 was awesome.
It was sick.
So and I think they were pushing towards that to be wanting to be more of a mascot.
Yep.
So it wouldn't surprise me if we see something this year in a very smaller capacity. You agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think a wild card here, Ryan, is a VR game with Astro, another VR game with Astro.
Well, yeah, Astrobot's Astro VR mission was sick, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me
Mhm.
at all. We'll go into the European studios. Fire Sprite, we know they're working on Call of the Mountain, so once that drops, they're pretty quiet. Guerrilla Games just released Forbidden West. They're just about to pop out the DLC.
Mm.
They're quiet. We will not see any major release from them outside of that. Housemarque dropped to Returnal semi-recently. They appear to be working on the port to
Yeah.
PC, so there's very unlikely we'll see something new from them either. London Studio, we know they're working on that sort of RPG set in London.
Mhm.
That's got no estimated time frame on it, so I'm saying that's probably 2024. Media Molecule just seem to want to waste time in in dreams,
God.
so there's nothing of note coming out from them.
Mhm.
Nixus, PC ports, nothing amazing.
Right.
Savage Game Studios, these guys are the ones who were bought to do mobile stuff.
Oh yeah.
So it's possible that they might drop something, but even then, like they were purchased this year. So it's unlikely that we'd see them deliver something in 2023, possibly 2024. But mobile development is probably a little bit different. So who knows?
Yeah.
Bend, I now head to the North American side. So do you line up with those thoughts around the European studios?
I do. Yeah. I don't disagree with anything there.
Yeah. So we look at the North American studios. Bend off Days Gone. We know they were working on something that kind of got scrapped, and then they're a little quiet at the moment. So and seeing how long it took them to deliver Days Gone, and now I quite enjoy Days Gone, but Days Gone, as you play it, you can clearly see a studio that's learning how to work within that system as they're building the game. Like you would argue the back end of the game is substantially better than the first. It's almost like they built the game in linear order.
Right.
Because you start to see them learn new development techniques, new mechanics, new systems as they're building the game. And they don't go back and put it at the start of the game. They go, oh, well, we've already done the start. Let's move on to the next. They're writing it like a novel.
Yeah.
So they're pretty quiet for a while.
Yeah.
Blue Point is probably the biggest outlier here in
I would
that
agree.
they've been quiet since release of PS5 with Dark Souls.
Yeah.
So either the rumor mill for the longest time as they're working on a Metal Gear remake.
Oh,
That would be amazing. They released a picture on their Twitter this week or last week.
I was going to ask you about
a Christmas tree with a bunch of things, and it's a cardboard box with a bow on it, or at least a plain looking box.
Yeah. It's got to be something.
And you would notice the color of the bow is red, very similar to the exclamation marks that pop up above an enemy's head in Metal Gear. There's just enough there to go, is it Metal Gear? Now, of course, they could be just fuck-assing around, which is possible. And it's very mean if they are, but it's possible. Do I still think, there's other rumor that they work on a Bloodborne remake? No. Everyone wants a Bloodborne remake, and I totally get it.
It's not happening.
If you had one, you'd have one. It's not now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree that ship has sailed, in my opinion.
Yeah. Haven, still too green. We're not going to see anything 2024, 2025.
Agree.
Insomniac, they got their hands full with Spider-Man 2 and then Wolverine as well. So they're busy outside of their one release we know coming next year. Naughty Dog, Factions is the answer. With that 2023, most likely, because it's getting further and further away. That'll be pushing 3 years since the release of Last of Us Part 2. Now, granted, I understand they kind of would want to get as far away from the controversy of Last of Us Part 2 as they could. But the second they release factions, that old stuff will come up regardless. So the
Yeah.
amount of time between part 2 and factions is irrelevant if they want to avoid that previous conversation. Then
Yeah.
they'll go quiet.
I think that Factions is coming in 2023. It just makes too much sense. And actually, I was of the belief until recently that this would make a ton of sense as one of the live service games in that are allegedly we're getting
Mm.
still getting 2 live service games by the end of March, which I have theories on those, but as well. But to me, it would have made
Oh,
a
I'd
ton.
love to hear them. Yeah.
Okay, well, it would make a ton of sense, in my opinion, to put Factions out by the end of March. That's not going to happen. I think, and the reason why I say that is because the show is coming out January 15th, obviously. And I think there's that synergy there, right? It's like, oh, it's going to be a big fucking show for HBO. The show is going to be big, in
Mm.
my opinion. I really feel that. It's going to be a big show. And then you want to kind of feed off of that and have this game out there that's accessible. It would just make it feels like it would make too much sense. Like, oh, hey, there's also this free to play Last of Us game that's, that ties into that show that you just watched that you love that you didn't know anything about. You should check it out. You can play it on PC, you can play it on PS5, whatever. They're not going to do that. I think that's too soon. But they're filling that void, in my opinion, by putting part one, the PC release of part one on March the 3rd to kind
What
of
if they back end the first season with factions?
that would
So, if they're
yeah.
doing, say, a 13 episode standard is 13
Mhm.
episodes, right? So what if they do, or 12? So what if they do 6 weeks, so 6 weeks in a row
Mhm.
of the show? They have a mid-season break. Most shows tend to do this, and then they drop the other 6, and then at the end of that second 6 and they season finale, there's factions.
That would be so dope. I think that honestly would be too good to be true. But
That allows for marketing time.
yeah,
That allows for, because even at the end of that that mid-season, at the beginning of that mid-season break,
yeah.
they can announce that they're like, hey, we've got more episodes coming later in the year, and we also have this.
I think you are spot on and that's been my sentiment as well, is like you should capitalize on this. Like the show is going to be fucking huge, man. I really feel that it's going to be fucking huge and they need to capitalize on it. And the PC port of part 1 is fine, but that doesn't have the same type of panache and pizzazz that putting out this multiplayer free to play game on PS5 and PC would. Like
Mm.
it's not the same, because there's something to be said about releasing these multiplayer games into an environment that has a lot of buzz. And if you can get people in while they're already having this water cooler experience with the Last of Us television show, and then that evolves into, well, I checked out the video game too for this, and it's really cool and you should play with me and oh, it's free, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm.
man, they could fucking hammer down on this, but I don't think it's going to make it. And the reason why I think that is because they just a couple of months ago maybe hired the guy from Epic who did design the battle pass for Fortnite. And maybe
But
I
a
could.
battle pass is about future work, right? It's not about the base game.
That is
The
true.
season pass is about bringing the forward. So maybe they've built the base game. They're like, well, now
Mm,
we're in the final parts or in the back end. How do we keep this going moving forward? Well, let's
that's a
bring a
good
guy
point.
that can help us moving forward. Like if they were like, hey, we're bringing in someone to work on how we create multiplayer servers, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a problem because you should have that down by now.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. Yeah. Cause I mean, they, in theory, I guess in practice, they wouldn't need a battle pass ready to go. Because let's use Call of Duty as example, or as an example, I should say. Modern Warfare 2, one of the most popular multiplayer games on the planet. They released the game October 28th, right? And they didn't have the first battle pass go live until, well, it was probably only 3 weeks after. I think it was like the middle of November they finally put out the first
Mm.
season pass for the game. So they had like a 3 week delay. So I guess you could do that, right? You could put out the game in March sometime, like you said, right after the show is ending or as it's ending, and then have the battle pass come around in April, maybe, or even May,
Well,
late
yeah, because the
after
show's
that.
coming out in Jan. Yes, I say because there's at least most the old way of running TV,
Yeah,
was 6 episodes. You have a break for a couple of months, and then you do the second half, right?
hmm
So you leave in middle of the season has a massive cliffhanger, couple of
yeah,
months wait. Now, granted, delivery method of TV has changed since then, where it's like here's everything, here's 12 weeks in a row,
yeah,
but like 3 months is a pretty good marketing cycle. So like we're January through to April maybe, or even if they push it, it might drop in June.
Mm-hmm.
As we said, right now PlayStation don't have anything in the middle of the year.
Right. I
And when did 3 years ago in June? Oh wait, was it June? No, it was around about May when Last of Us Part 2 dropped.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was no,
Yeah.
was it May or June? I don't
Oh
remember.
shit, I don't remember.
I want to say it was June. No,
Once
no, no,
again, I
no.
played it early, so
It
the
it
time throws out for me.
it was May because Ghost of Tsushima released a month later in June, right?
That's right. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if there's a month break in between within the season,
Yeah.
you're gonna middle of the year, enough time to push the market. I think that would actually be. All this is theoretical because
Sure.
will it happen? Oh, it's so unlikely.
Sure. Yeah, we're just we're throwing darts at the board, but I think we're I think we're talking from a place of educated guess at the very least, because I think that we're making good points in terms of rationale and just tying your IP to. There's this big push, obviously. PlayStation Productions, there's shows out the ass, there's movies out the ass, whatever. There's live service games. Like, this is what we're getting. Like, it's PlayStation live service, PlayStation TV shows and movies. Like, this is what they're heading towards, right? So, like, you're just it just feels like that is such a fucking opportunity that you cannot miss, in my opinion.
Mm.
But it just seems like it's too. I don't know. That's on one hand, and then on the other hand, it also seems like it's too soon. But to your point, I mean, you're right. It'll be almost 3 years since they made The Last of Us, part two, I should say. And we also know that they were, I'm sure, in some form or fashion, working on the multiplayer, at least in a probably pre-production role, or from a pre-production standpoint, at the very least, while they were developing part two. I think they said as much. We didn't include it in the game because it got too big or whatever. They said something like
Yeah,
that.
like they started it and then they expanded the scope of it, and hence where
Yeah.
they are now.
So I do agree. I agree with your points. You make some great points, and I agree with your logic. And I think that, man, if they could find a way to do that, if they could find a way to get the free to play, and I'm assuming it's free to play. We don't know that. There's just been reports of that. But even if it costs
It would
money,
make sense in terms of what they want. It
yeah,
would make sense.
I agree. And
By they, I mean PlayStation is.
yeah, and I think that case is strengthened too. Would you agree by the fact that they hired the guy that did the Fortnite Battle Pass? Like, why would you make a Battle Pass for? I mean, it does happen. Don't get me wrong. I mean, look at Call of Duty. I guess so. I mean, so I guess I just kind of talked myself out of it
Yeah, but I
almost.
also
But
think it's more of they want the understanding of. I would assume if it were me and I had
Mhm.
access to this person, I would go, well, I want the best person, not because I want to mirror Fortnite,
Right.
because I
Oh
want to
yeah.
mirror their business practices.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest things that people have a problem with is the value proposition of a season pass
Yeah.
or a battle pass. They're like, well, it's got it's got to have just enough to hook you, but not be too expensive, have enough reward, but not enough. Like,
Mhm.
it's a really tough balance. And as much as I don't play Fortnite, nor do I really think highly of it,
Mhm.
you can't argue that they do a brilliant job.
Oh yeah. No
And
question.
then we look at other games that come out and try to drop a battle pass, and it's horrendous
Yes. A lot
because
of the times.
they're approaching it from the wrong angle, right?
Mm.
Whether it be they're looking at it purely from a monetary, purely from a retention rather than a reward for retention. It's a very tough balance because it's essentially psychology and it's positive behavior reinforcement, right?
Right.
By playing the game, by doing this, you get a reward, but not too much for a reward. If you
Sure.
got everything, why would you come back?
Yeah.
But it's not
Exactly.
negatively impacting you for your time either. It's respecting you. It's a very fine balance. And
Mm.
this individual may help get them to that space
Mhm.
because, if it goes bad, it doesn't just tarnish the Last of Us name,
Mm.
which is already unnecessarily tarnished,
Mhm.
pushes them in a different way.
Right. So you had a couple of studios left, I think. We were on
Yeah, so
Naughty
we've
Dog.
got
So who was left?
we've got Pixel Opus, so obviously their
Oh
last
yeah.
release being Concrete Genie, which I think is exceptional. But these guys are at essence an independent studio. There's like 20, 30
Mhm.
people in there. So we might have something, but it's
Right.
not massively likely. San Diego, obviously we'll have MLB The Show in the first part of the year.
Definitely.
But as we know now, that kind of goes everywhere, which is great. But even
Mhm.
then, the rumor mill for the longest time has been that San Diego studio has a secondary studio.
Mhm.
The rumor mill was that they were working on an Uncharted either remake and or sequel.
Mhm.
So will we see that next year? Possibly, but
Mm.
once again, it'd be a very tight release.
Yeah.
And knowing that, like we mentioned before with Gorilla, Gorilla, they're not doing much. Well, there's the alleged Horizon Zero Dawn remake.
Yeah, forgot about that.
You know what I mean? So, like, are they going to release that alongside the show? And that
Yeah.
Netflix show, as far as I know, hasn't started filming yet. You know, there's a lot of time to play with there for Gorilla.
Yeah.
Uncharted, there's the sequel movie, if it's ever doing one. I know it made enough money to be considered,
Mhm.
but like there's no impending pressure for an Uncharted game. There is
Agree.
a greater pressure for a Horizon remake, but where we just had one, but a game, we're about to get some DLC and a VR, so it would actually make sense for them to push that out a little bit longer.
And a multiplayer game.
Yeah, and the multiplayer, there's a lot there, so that remake might be a while away.
Yeah, agreed.
Santa Monica just released one of the greatest games of all time, and most certainly this year, they're going to go have a snooze. They're going to take some time. Now, allegedly, like Corey Barlog and the team are working on a new IP,
Yeah.
so there's that. But once again, that will itself will be a couple of years away.
Yeah.
Sucker Punch coming off the back of Ghost of Tsushima. The rumor mill is there is, I think they didn't disclose they're working on a sequel.
Yep.
We ain't seeing that next year. Not happening.
No.
And then the last one is Valkyrie. So Valkyrie is like a relatively new pickup.
Oh, yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
not quite sure what they could really
I think
do.
I think they're mostly support. Am I right about that? Like they're
Yeah,
helping.
so they did a lot of work with Ragnarok as in that support place.
Right.
But yeah, it's possibly that they're doing some work alongside that those what are they? We just said it a moment ago. Just Haven were doing it too. The games as a service
Mm.
ones, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, yeah. Doing assets and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think they're involved in a capacity, but I don't think they're going to have their own big title just yet.
Right. Yeah, I would
So it looks pretty dry outside of what we know,
right.
even what we look forward to, we look ahead of. But thankfully, once again, even regardless of what people's stance are around exclusives, because I still believe first party exclusives are essential.
I agree.
Second party exclusives are desired. And I baffles me that people don't seem to understand the difference because Microsoft's desire to buy the cow rather than just the milk
Sure.
frustrates me because that restricts it not just this game but any game moving forward. A
Right.
second party exclusive deal, although shitty for those that don't have that console, doesn't forever prohibit that game from ever coming to you,
Right. Yeah.
right? And that's the big difference. A whole different in mindset, right?
Oh, yeah. I
And
mean,
and and that's my big problem. So, but like PlayStation have that locked down with the likes of your Final Fantasies,
mm,
your Silent Hill, the stuff like that. So like they've got enough to bolster a very limited first party setup.
yeah.
Now, when you want to compare that to Xbox, who didn't have any massive releases this year, they did have some stuff come to Game Pass in a relatively exclusive concept, but Game Pass is disposable. The games that you play on there are devalued. Like I never everyone jokes, but it is. It's devalued, right?
Yeah.
It's the same way that phone games aren't worth dick anymore. Even if they're
Mm.
brilliant, they're not worth anything because they're disposable.
Yeah, that's
Game
interesting.
Pass is treated the same way. So the idea of these second party exclusives within Microsoft don't work.
Right.
And that is, I believe, why Microsoft are going down this line of wanting to buy everything first party because they know second party doesn't work. Because the second it comes off Game Pass, it's popping up everywhere else and will do fine.
Yeah. I'm I'm not a fan of the Game Pass model for pretty much all the reasons you just said. I think if anyone other than Microsoft was doing it, that they wouldn't be. Like if it was not Microsoft, they would not do it. As most people know, Microsoft is just a stupid big company with a stupid amount of money, and they can basically use this model to almost. to make themselves, to try to force themselves into being competitive. And like you were saying, they've gone out and they've bought these teams that are going to make these games for them. And, I don't know that outside of like maybe a few franchises, like there's nothing that Microsoft has really made or developed or grown that is all that compelling, at least on their own. You know what I'm
There
saying?
is nothing. There is no individual franchise that they have built on their own.
Right.
Even Halo, right? Bungie made it for Mac. They
Right.
bought it. Gears of War, made by Epic. They bought it. Pretty
Yeah.
sure even like Forza was external, and they've only just bought the studios that do it, right?
Yeah.
Microsoft's entire business model is buy someone else's shit, but don't not build the culture, not build the setup, the understanding, whatever. Which is PlayStation. Aside from when their hands were forced with the likes of Haven, but once again, they've never released anything, so it doesn't matter. Savage, the same. Valkyrie, Nixus, Firesprite, they've created working relationships beforehand. So
Yeah.
it's a very different approach. Even Insomniac, right? Insomniac made a stack of exclusive games previously with the likes of
Yeah.
Ratchet and Clank, then went away and then came back. And then they went, hey, would you like to work with us? Where Microsoft just walks in, throws the check down, and goes, well, we want you. Like it's the complete,
Mm.
total philosophical approach to it all. And the expression that I heard the other day, which I think lines up brilliantly, is Microsoft have the ability to change the economic structure of the games industry
Mm. Yeah.
because Microsoft, is so large that Xbox is such a small percentage of it. They don't. It's like they don't worry about money.
Right.
In that, Office will make them a stack of coin. Azure will make them a stack of coin. Right there, they have so many other lines of revenue outside of Xbox that they can literally run in the red forever.
Yeah.
And because if they when they by doing so, it alters the market, which means anyone that wants to compete with them also have to run in the red. But because they're smaller and don't have that supports behind them, they will crumble and they will fall.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. And it's
So it doesn't. So it devalues the quality of games. It devalues the industry at large in terms of this is what we need to make. It devalues the cost of games
mm,
because how many different times you're like, "Now I'll play when it comes to Game Pass."
yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can
Like, "Oh,
see
is it
it.
coming to Game Pass? I am not going to play it."
Yeah, you can see it whenever they if you follow anyone on Twitter who tweets out like what the percentage of games played on which console are, like there was some big release recently that only 6% of people played it on Xbox or bought it on Xbox, I should say, in the UK.
Yeah.
So that tells you that either they're playing it on Game Pass or they're not playing it at all on Xbox.
Yeah,
Which,
and then you look like, and once again, the Game Awards are subjective, and people you can discuss what an individual's belief on the value of Game Pass, of value of the Game Awards is. When you don't have a single game within your first party delivery at that event, you're a problem.
yeah,
And
that's it.
even when they do, they ain't there. Like think about the last handful of in-house made Xbox exclusive. I'm not saying this is not console war bullshit. This is relatively objective, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Relatively, I'm
Sure.
coming at it with a slant, so it's relatively.
Sure.
You look at the last string of releases from PlayStation, right? God of War Ragnarok, Game of the Year nominated. Horizon Forbidden West, Game of the Year nominated. Last of Us Part 2, Game of the Year nominated.
Mm.
Ghost of Tsushima, Game of the Year nominated. Halo Infinite, okay. Forza, brilliant. Forza fucking smashes GT every time.
Mhm.
These were made before their acquisition of those of Playground,
Yep.
etc. Right?
Yep.
Grounded, it's released on Game Pass. Obsidian were making it before they were purchased. Deathloop, made prior to the purchase.
Mhm.
Like they've got nothing to show, and like it's all like they have incredible potential, and I cannot fucking wait to see what that potential is. I really can't
Yeah,
because a competitive market is a good market, and if Xbox can come to a point where they can deliver this similarly matched high quality games, fuck yes,
I agree. We need that
gimme.
really. Yeah, we need
But
that for
like
sure.
even Starfield. Redfall. These were in production before they were purchased. And the same as like Psychonauts 2, as well received as it was, that was pretty much 90% made before Double Fine were purchased. It is
Right.
not, should not be considered a PlayStation purchase.
I
That makes
agree.
sense?
Oh yeah. It
Sorry,
makes
a Microsoft purchase.
yeah.
So my phone just started ringing and threw me out.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, but it's going to be an interesting 2023 to see
Yeah.
how it all shakes out and how it comes together, and it's going to be a big year for games. This is kind of the post COVID, whatever you want to call it, rush of games from really all parties, and so it's going to be, I think, quite a battle from between Xbox and PlayStation, as it should be. And as you were alluding to, we need that for healthy competition in the industry, and we need that as PlayStation fans to keep them honest in a way. So I'm looking forward to it. And there's going to be a lot of games to play. Our wallets are going to suffer for it, but we're going to hopefully have a good ride along the way in 2023. But Ryan, I did want to. I've ran out of time, but I did want to ask you about the
Yeah, push it.
Activision deal, but I won't do it, and I'm tired of talking about it anyway. So
In short, I was originally really confident that it would have happened regardless.
yeah,
Now, not so much.
yeah, I agree. Ditto.
But my challenge with it, very quick thoughts, is it's the precedent that it establishes, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what happens, this is the biggest acquisition ever. If this goes through without contest, any sale that is less than this,
Yep.
if any regulator tries to stop it, they go, well, the Activision deal was bigger.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why are you stopping me?
Yeah. I
That's the
think,
problem.
yep, bingo. I totally agree. So I think it's very much in question at this point, but
Also, and I should also mention, Sony are totally in the fucking wrong here too. They are just as full of shit.
oh
Everyone's full
yeah.
of shit in this scenario.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's been comical to read all the shit, and you're absolutely right. They're both full of shit. So, but anyway, Ryan, thank you again for joining me for doing the show with me, for somewhat filling in for Travis. But I wanted to have you on and do a little holiday special here, and so I appreciate you coming on and doing the show. And I also wanted to give you the floor here as we head out to pimp yourself, to tell people where they can find you and how they can listen to you and you and Max and your all show and all that good stuff. So the floor is yours.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, if you enjoyed the bullshit that I say and the way I present myself, you can check out my weekly PlayStation podcast. We did 279 episodes, and we're at
Whoa.
right now as we end the year. So it's called For the Players, the PopCulturists PlayStation podcast. Releases every Monday morning at 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard or Daylight Savings Time. The way we sell it is that we are the late night show of PlayStation podcasts, in that we deliver it differently. In the way that the DualSense pod here is very news focused, it's very analytical in that sense. We do that too, but for us, it's wrapped in personality. It's wrapped in high energy. It's wrapped in us, the Max and myself, the host. Like, you're coming to see to us and what we have to say. And now, Max has got a couple years in the industry now. I've been doing this for near on a decade. Like, it's wrapped in personality and silliness and lighthearted and entertainment, but it's grounded in knowledge and understanding and experience. It's one of those things. What we do, although inspired by other shows out there, there's not much else like it.
Sure. Well, Ryan is one of, if not my favorite person in the PlayStation podcast space. And
Oh,
I mean,
thank you,
I
sir.
think as much as obvious as you can, as a parent, from the fact that you're the only person that I ever have on the show. So yeah, definitely check him and Max out and check out their show every week.
And if you want to follow my nonsense in the written form, you can over at Twitter at
Oh yeah,
HaggardMC, HAGGARDMC. I mostly either talk about wrestling, PlayStation, or my kid.
wrestling.
So yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. But yeah,
Well,
thank you for having me again, dude. Like, it's an absolute blast. Like, it's I do feel, that I feel for Travis. So I intend up just come and replace him. Uh, but yeah, there are times where I get to come in and chat with the both of you, and it's always a blast. I got to get you on mine at some point.
yeah, let's do it.
Problem is, Max is too reliable, and he's there every week, which is brilliant. But like, we do have our supplementary show, More the Players, which was something that we want to do more of. We want to do a lot this year, but time got away from us.
Yeah.
So in the next year, we're going to start doing, weekly episode reviews of The Last of Us. We wanted to have Travis come and talk GT7 with us, and then
Oh
the world
yeah.
got really busy and we both
Forgot about
kind of
that.
just forgot. So yeah, like we'll have to get you over to do something. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. Might be if there's a showcase, we'll do a big collab show or something. We'll
Nice.
work it out.
Yeah, that'd
We'd
be
love
dope.
to have.
I would love that. The only issue I see with that is if I feel like if your audience hears me for the first time, they're gonna do like the thing with the meme where the person's like making the face and like taking the headphones off because they're gonna like, who the fuck is this cowboy that Ryan's gone out and
Well,
gotten to?
that happens. I'm sure this happens when people listen to your show. Like, I don't think I have a very prominent Australian accent, but
Yeah.
like when sitting next to yourself, like I'm sure it comes through clear as day.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like where I don't speak very Australian
Hmm.
or very Australian, you know, so it's just like there are certain words, certain pronunciations, just little things here and there. And so yeah, it totally happens.
Well, thank you again, man. And if you guys want to follow our show, of course, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave us a review or a rating on your podcast service as well as the YouTube. Leave us a like and a comment. We'd very much appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to get a new episode delivered to you every Monday on your podcast service or the YouTube if you listen there. And yeah, share us with a friend or a loved one as well. That always helps. And we would love to talk into their ear holes every week as well. Don't forget to find us on social media as well. We're on Twitter at the DualSense Pod, but we have a TikTok now, believe it or not, Instagram where we share virtual photography, Facebook, which I still really don't know why we have it, but whatever the fuck. And then we have a blog which is called the DualSense Podcast.wordpress.com. You can see our photos there, our bios. You can get the show notes each week and the episodes there as well. So be sure to find us wherever you are. We would love to hear from you. And we hope you enjoyed the show with our friend Ryan Betson. And we will talk at you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.
More like next year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.